Hello everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to today's webinar on the topic of emerging threats in information security. What next? Led by our subject matter expert Mufaddal Tuskin. Whether you are a cybersecurity expert, a business owner, or are simply concerned about safeguarding personal information, this season is packed with insights to keep you a step ahead of your cybersecurity threats. Throughout this webinar, we will also dive into the best practices, highlighting its importance in today's rapidly evolving threat landscape. So, without any further ado, I request Mufaddal Tuskin to kindly take over. Over to you, Mufaddal.
Hi, Pratik. Good morning, and thank you for the brief introduction to the program. Uh, I welcome you all to this session on emerging threats in cybersecurity and what's next and how cyber threats are evolving. So I welcome you all to this particular session. I hope this webinar is informative in terms of, as Pratik mentioned, whether you are an individual, whether you are working for an organization, or whether you are working for or you are owning a business. We are constantly faced by cyber threats, right? We are all affected by that. And today we are living in a completely digitally transformed kind of an economy and environment where we are doing everything on the digital platform, whether we are making transactions, whether we are posting our social media, interacting with our friends, relatives, or through the social media platform. We are all living this digital world, and the digital world is sometimes a very scary place, right? Because of all the threats. So that is the whole agenda of today's webinar, where we will be talking about what are the cyber threats that not just organizations, but also in terms of individuals, how we are impacted by these threats. So that's the whole objective, is to make you all aware of how threats have evolved over the last decade and how they continue to evolve as we go forward with the advent of artificial intelligence. So quickly moving on to our topic, let's talk about the emerging threats in cybersecurity. And as I mentioned, the agenda or the objective of today's webinar is to gain some insights on what cyber threats are, how they have evolved over the last decade or so, and how they continue to evolve. So that is the whole agenda of today's session, where we will be taking a brief overview of what is the cyber threat landscape that organizations and individuals face. We'll understand some of the key threats that organizations and we as individuals face, and the evolving nature of the cyber threats. And also we will be discussing, as I said, today with the advent of artificial intelligence, what kind of an impact artificial intelligence has, how it is being leveraged by the threat actors or the malicious actors or cyber criminals, and in propagating very sophisticated cyber attacks. And also we'll be looking at how we can take some defensive measures and how AI also plays a crucial role in defensive aspect of cybersecurity. So quickly move on to the introduction, and just let's have a quick overview of what are the global, what is the threat landscape that organizations and we individuals face. Is because, when you look at cyber threats, they have evolved quite dramatically over the past decade with the advancements in technology. The cyber criminals have also become very sophisticated, and in the environment post pandemic, where we have moved into the cloud environment, and there has been a greater movement where organizations have moved their um, workloads into the cloud, often, and also taking into the remote work environment. The entire attack surface has increased, as I said, since we are a completely digitally transformed economy. So today, organizations of all sizes, across industries, are facing a kind of a unprecedented level of cyber risk, with the threat actors or the cyber criminals often targeting the critical infrastructure like your financial services, the healthcare services, the energy sector. So, in terms of what are the key drivers that are driving these cyber threats, is the widespread adoption of digital tools, cloud computing. Today we have IoT devices. Today, all the devices, whether we are looking at refrigerators or we have smart TVs, we have smart refrigerators, we have smart watches, all of that, they have increased the number of vulnerabilities that the cyber criminals can exploit. Even if you look at the current scenario, the post the COVID pandemic, there has been a great shift to remote work, which has opened up new opportunities for attackers due to people working from home. The traditional security measures that the organizations adopted today don't work in the kind of a remote environment. We have different types of cyber criminals. You have, the organized crime syndicates who have moved onto the online platform. Today, a lot of cyber warfare is happening where countries are involved in, uh, cyber warfare with their state-sponsored attackers. You have hacktivists. They are becoming more increasingly sophisticated in their methods, often using APTs, or what we call as APTs, as advanced persistent threats, to target high value entities. Now, when you talk about high value entities, these could be your organizations, even your high value, the high value individuals who work in the organizations, even the celebrities for that matter. These all become valuable targets uh, for all these cyber criminals. Today, when we look at organizations, we have moved into an environment where we focus on our key skills and resources to optimize our productivity. So organizations have become more interconnected. They have started outsourcing a lot of their non-core activities to vendors who specialize in those core activities, right? So cyber threat or cyber criminals have started exploiting this trust relationship between these vendors into propagating attacks which really target the supply chain of the organization itself. And they have introduced, because of the organizations moving around with a lot of having a lot of interaction with a lot of third party service providers, it has again increased its own kind of challenges and the attack surface, where threat actors are actually targeting these vulnerabilities through which are coming up because of these kind of relationships. So they exploit these relationships for propagating their attacks. Supply chain attacks have today become so, in terms of the attack scenario, it has become so lucrative to the cyber criminals, because by attacking one vendor, they are able to then propagate the attack to various organizations who are taking the services of this particular vendor. And from the global threat perspective, if you look at what are the key threats that that keep most of the security professionals awake at night, would be the ransomware. Now, ransomware is a type of an attack or a malware which basically encrypts the data of the target victims, making that data unavailable to them. And the cyber criminals then start demanding some kind of a ransom, often which is in kind of a cryptocurrency, which is demanded by the cyber criminals to share the decrypting key so that the data becomes available. Now, when you look at ransomware, again, ransomware has evolved into very sophisticated multi-stage attacks. Ransomware has tradition, ransomware in the traditional ransomware sense, the cyber criminal would encrypt the data of the victim and then demand a kind of ransom to get the decryption key or make the data available. Today, if you look at your ransomware operators, their attacks have become much more sophisticated. They don't only, just encrypt the data, but prior to encryption of the data, they steal the data. Okay, and then they threaten the organization or the victim who was infected with that ransomware with a threat to release that stolen data in the public forum or through the public sources to ensure that those victims end up paying the ransom, which we call it as a double extortion kind of ransomware attacks. So the threat actors not only encrypt the data, but prior to the encryption of the data, they steal the data, and then they use that stolen data to threaten the organizations or the victims that if the ransom is not paid, then that particular data would be released in the public forums, right? Now, this becomes very critical because, in today, if you look at it, most organizations or most countries, for that matter, they have enacted their data privacy acts. Even in India, we have passed the data protection bill or the data privacy bill, okay, which should be enacted very shortly. Now, these data privacy laws, and they are laws that organizations have to basically comply to and adhere to. If there is any data, which is when we talk about data privacy, we are generally talking about the personally identifiable data of the subjects who are residing within a particular country. Now, if that data is stolen and if it is breached, then the organizations end up paying huge amount of fines. If you just do a quick search on Google for the kind of data privacy penalties that organizations have paid, you see that organizations have paid millions of dollars in terms of penalties for any data privacy breaches. Now, the threat actors, they are using these same data privacy laws by stealing the PII data from the organization and then threatening the organizations that if they don't pay up the ransom, then they would disclose this PII data. And the organization will not only have to pay the ransom, but if that particular data is released in the public forums, then they would also, not only just released, but the very fact that that particular data has been stolen and there's a breach would indicate that the organizations have failed to comply with the data privacy regulations, making them, liable to pay those kind of huge penalties. So there have been a lot of, attacks on organizations. You have several ransomware attacks, like you have the WannaCry, you have the Kaseya ransomware attack. You also have the Colonial Pipeline attack, which was basically a US-based entity. And that particular organization was impacted with a kind of a ransomware attack, which disrupted the entire supply of oil across the regions. Now, in terms of ransomware, again, there has an evolution in the ransomware attacks. You have ransomware as a service, which is available. So you have ransomware as a service operators who provide this ransomware as a service, which leads to any threat actor who doesn't have the skills to propagate this particular attack. So the entry levels for the cyber criminals to propagate a ransomware attack has come down significantly. which allows even less skilled hackers to actually launch sophisticated attacks. Now, when it comes down to phishing and social engineering, uh, even today, phishing is one of the most common methods of delivering a malicious code to an organization or the people who are working in the organization or even to individuals. Okay, so these basically involve the use of deceptive emails, messages. Today you have SMSs which are coming in. Today we have QR codes. So the QR codes are used by the threat actors to create a kind of a QR code of a malicious link which bypasses your detection mechanism. Okay. Today you have you know a artificial intelligence which has being used widely by the threat actors to sophisticate these phishing campaigns, which make the mails and the phishing mails or the messages becoming more personalized, okay, and difficult to detect to basically propagate the kind of attacks. We also discussed about supply chain attacks, where the cyber criminals actually compromise a third-party vendor or a supplier to an organization to introduce their malicious code into the application or the hardware. And then those infected codes or systems are actually deployed in the organizations who are procuring these services from the third party vendors, and then they get affected because of that. So the threat actors are actually um, you know misusing or leveraging this trust between the suppliers and the custom organizations to propagate these kind of attacks. Now, the SolarWinds attack, which happened sometime in 2019, is one of the most notable examples where threat actors compromise software updates to gain access to the networks. Okay. So supply chain attacks, because there is a trust relationship between the organization and their vendors, okay, they become very difficult to detect because they are actually exploiting the threat of the organization. You also have a significant threat which comes from the insiders. Now, what do you mean by insiders? Insiders are those people who are employed within the organization, right? You and I, when we are employed with an organization, we have certain privileges to, perform our day-to-day tasks. Now, uh, whether intentionally or unintentionally, due to negligence or lack of awareness, we as employees of an organization, we pose a significant risk to the organizations because we have access to the corporate resources, the corporate networks, and we are uh, we as I said, intentionally or unintentionally, we can be a part of a cyber attack which is being propagated against an organization. Now, when we talk about advanced persistent threats, today, as we just mentioned about how ransomwares have evolved. Ransomware are nothing but malicious codes or malwares, as we call it. Malware is a combination of two words, malicious as well as software. So these particular malicious software or have become sophisticated. They are using advanced mechanisms to bypass or evade our antivirus detection mechanisms. Okay. APTs are also those threat groups who basically you have your cyber criminals, your cyber criminal gangs, you have your nation state sponsored attackers. Now, these type of groups, they are highly resourceful. They have skills, unlimited kind of funding. Okay, and they can, when they propagate a particular attack against an organization, they can be very persistent. It is not a matter of if it's a matter of when they would basically uh, compromise an organization's networks. So APTs are a constant threat to organizations because because of all these they because of the abundance of skills, abundance of resources. They can be very persistent, and they are a threat to an organizations. Like you have different groups, like you have Fancy Bear, you have Cozy Bear, who are basically linked to Russian intelligence, are known to carry out espionage activities and intelligence gathering activities for critical infrastructures of an organization. Okay. APTs also use with the advancement in technologies. They use advanced obfuscation measures, encryption methods to make themselves more and more difficult to detect, so that they can continue doing their activities in a stealthy manner, right? So these are some of the common threats that organizations face, the most common threats. It's not just, these are not the only threats that the organizations face, but today, you know, these would be the most common threats that organizations and individuals, as individuals, we face out today. Now, when we talk of how cyber threats have evolved over the time, attackers or the cyber criminals or the APT groups are increasingly focusing on critical sectors, like we discussed earlier. They are targeting the financial sector of the financial sector. They are targeting the healthcare center, the sector, transportation services, energy services. The consequences of these, when the threat actors are actually targeting these critical infrastructures, and when they are successful in carrying out their attacks, the impact of such attacks can be far-reaching, because they could disrupt your financial services, they could disrupt your healthcare services, they could disrupt your energy, power, and so on and so forth. Okay, like we discussed about the Colonial Pipeline attack, which was an attack, which was a ransomware attack, which was propagated against this organization. Uh, it actually impacted the entire supply of oil across the nation at the national level. So it actually impacted the supply of energy, power that was being supplied. It impacted their entire power grid, for that matter. Okay. Now, with the emergence of AI and automation in cybercrime, cyber criminals are using these technologies to propagate attacks like phishing, exploitation of vulnerabilities. Now, vulnerabilities are nothing but weaknesses in systems or applications. These are flaws, basically, which get exploited by the threat actors. Okay. And they are using these technologies even to create more and more sophisticated malwares. So this automation allows them to scale their attacks more efficiently. They are able to target a large number of victims simultaneously. You have the deepfake technologies. Now, deepfakes, or when we all have heard of what deepfakes are all about. Uh, you have your video, you have your audio. Okay, so basically, when you talk about deepfakes, they are using synthetic media, which is used by these AI algorithms to generate uh, audio or video which resemble uh, uh, a human entity, and into carrying out fraudulent activities. Uh, they use these deep fake videos and audios to impersonate uh, executives, high-level executives, to authorize fraudulent transfers. They go about, compromising your business emails. So AI-generated deepfakes can enable a threat actor to convincingly impersonate in individuals in video or audio clips, leading to a kind of a fraudulent activity, or steal the identity of an individual for impersonation. Now, deepfake technology is being weaponized in disinformation campaigns, spreading out false rumors, uh, blackmail schemes, and social engineering attacks. Now, when we talk about social engineering attacks, again, these are attacks which are targeting us humans. So when we talk about social engineering, it's nothing about setting up an attack where you manipulate the human psychology, right, into performing certain tasks which they would normally do. Like, for example, uh, clicking on a malicious link, which would probably get direct the particular victim or the user to a malicious site which can download a malicious code on their system. Or you have attacks where a particular code or a link could lead a particular user to a kind of a authentic looking website which is prompting the user to log into the account, and the unsuspecting victim would provide his credentials, and those credentials would be relayed to those threat actors. Okay, so they would get some valid credentials which they could use then to compromise organization's network. Now, when we talk about moving to the cloud, also when we discuss about COVID pandemic, it's not that cloud organizations were not using the cloud to host their workloads, but the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, where there was nationwide lockdown, people were not able to move out of their homes. Uh, Organizations had to continue doing their businesses, so they had to move their workloads quickly into the cloud so that they could facilitate their users and their employees who were working from home to access those cloud resources and then continue their normal business operations, right? Now, cloud computing, along with your IoT devices, have expanded the attack surface for cyber criminals significantly. Uh, you know, when we talk about moving to the cloud, misconfigured services in the cloud environments, IoT devices which are having some vulnerabilities uh, are often exploited by the cyber criminals as entry points into your larger networks. So if you are like, for example, today we use Dropbox, we use OneDrive, we use Google Drive. These are all storage services, okay, where we are storing our information, okay. Now, if these storage services are not configured properly, then a cyber criminal could exploit those vulnerabilities and then get unauthorized access to the data that we store in these kind of storage services, which could lead to a kind of a data breach, So even when we move to the cloud, there's another challenge about security in terms of who is responsible uh, for the security of those particular environments, because you have a third party service provider and then you have an organization. So who shares the or who is responsible for securing the particular data which is being stored in the cloud? That again, not having a clear understanding of the responsibilities of the organization and the service provider again leads to challenges which could be exploited by the threat actor into propagating attacks. Now, in all these, when we discuss about the evolving nature of cyber threats, artificial intelligence and machine learning plays a very significant role. Today, when we look at cyber security, a lot of organizations, a lot of your security products, a lot of your security services they in, integrate artificial intelligence and machine learning to make the entire process of detecting these emerging threats or the evolving threats more proactively for an organization. At the same time, AI also plays a very significant role because threat actors are also using the same technologies to sophisticate their attacks. So when we look at the role of artificial intelligence in cybercrime, so artificial intelligence enables attackers to automate their operations and scale up their operations. Okay, like when we say automate their operations, like for example, we talk about phishing, we talk about malware distribution, we talk about scanning systems on a network to detect any kind of vulnerable components. Now, when you talk about vulnerability, as I mentioned, it's some kind of weakness. So threat actors, when they want to exploit uh, an organization, they would typically want to understand what are the services, what are the systems in the organization's network. So they would often do some kind of an activity to scan those systems to see what are the vulnerabilities. So threat actors are using artificial intelligence to automate all these processes for more coordinated attacks with lesser and lesser human intervention. Threat actors in terms of phishing, we keep posting a lot of information. You know, we let's accept it today. We are present on most social media platforms, and we do keep posting information on these social media platforms, right? Whether it be LinkedIn, whether it could be Facebook, whether you have your Instagram Reels, uh, you have your TikTok Reels. We are all there on the social media, right? And today, a lot of people and a lot of us actually, and we're spending a lot of time in on these social media platforms. Now, how threat actors are using artificial intelligence to create some kind of a personalized phishing emails. So they use these technologies to score the social media platforms, to profile their victims, because oftentimes, from our posts, we also reveal our mental state of mind, our interests, okay, uh, our hobbies. We have our relatives who are also a part of our social media, and when we talk about the friends and the relations which we have, the contacts that we have in our social media platforms. So these cyber criminals, they use artificial intelligence to score the social media platforms to gather all these bits of information. So they actually gather all the data from all these social media platforms, and then they profile the victim. So what are his sentiments? What are his hobbies? What are his, what is the way he communicates on the social media platform, the authority with which he communicates. They gather all this information, and then they use this information to create and craft highly personalized phishing emails, which look so authentic uh, that they actually go about deceiving the individuals into performing the actions that the threat actor wants you to do more effectively. Attacks, the cyber criminals are also using artificial intelligence to avoid or evade your traditional security measures, like your antivirus softwares, your spam filters. Uh, They are using artificial intelligence to create malwares that can adopt its behavior to avoid detection, which makes it that much more harder for all the defense mechanisms to target them. So you have AI-powered malware and ransomware. So they have the cyber criminals use the AI to develop these more sophisticated and resilient malwares, including ransomware. Now, from the information that they gather, they can also, they can use these technologies for the ransomware to determine which are the most valuable files on the system to encrypt, or they also are designed to dynamically change their behavior to avoid or evade any kind of detection, making it that much more difficult and making those malicious codes that much more stealthy in operations. Eh, Artificial intelligence tools are also used uh, to scan and identify the vulnerabilities in networks. So as I mentioned earlier, you have your systems in your organization network, you have your own systems, you are working on your systems. So these tools, these AI driven tools or AI powered tools, they can quickly scan and identify what are the vulnerabilities which could be present in your system, especially on those high value targets like your servers, your applications, okay, your critical business critical applications, so that the threat actors can target them again. We already discussed about deepfake AI. So basically, use of artificial intelligence in creating these deepfake videos and audios, they make those more realistic. They understand the tone in which an individual is talking. Uh, uh, so they use these technologies to create a synthetic or a fake audio which replicates a authentic person's voice into and using them to kind of propagate those attacks in a real world scenario. Now, when we talk of the role, again, as I mentioned, uh, your AI goes about getting media, getting data from the social media platforms, corporate websites, public forums to build a complete detailed profile of a potential victim, and then use that information to craft a kind of a convincing message. uh, AI tools basically scrape this data from all these profiles, from your social media profiles, your postings on job sites, the email histories, to create these kind of phishing campaigns. Now they use AI tools like natural language processing, which allows the cyber criminal to create phishing mails that are grammatically correct, and they from all the information that they have gathered and the profiling they have done about the victims, they also uh, make those emails to be more, or those messages to be contextually relevant. Now just to give you an example, uh, uh, a cyber criminal would use an AI tool uh, to basically analyze an executive's LinkedIn profile and social media activity, and then craft a phishing email that looks like it came from a trusted colleague. Okay, now there are several threats and several attacks which have been propagated where a finance manager received a deepfake audio from his CEO instructing the finance manager to transfer some funds because of an urgent business need. Razia, रुको, बाद में करो. So, a CEO so the finance manager was tricked by this deep fake audio, which was resembling the CEO's voice, CEO's tone, and his characteristics. making the finance manager believe that it was actually the audio which came from the CEO, and he affected those transfers. So something around $230,000 were actually, or $280,000 were actually transferred into the cyber criminal's account, and then that particular money was actually used somewhere else. Okay. So these are the ways where you have the AI plays such a big role. We also have business email compromises, which are basically scams, which involve attackers who are impersonating uh, either your high-level executives or your trusted colleagues to trick the employees into kind of either revealing sensitive informations or kind of a scenario where you have some kind of sensitive information like your credentials, which can be stolen. You have to make things that much more easier for the cyber criminal. You have AI powered phishing kits and automation. Okay, so these phishing kits basically are used by the cyber criminals to create a website or a phishing website that would look nearly identical or legitimate as, let's say, for a Google website or any of your organization's websites, making it difficult for you as a user to determine whether it is a real website, your real organization website, or is it a fake website, which could again be used, like for example, uh, you know, uh, let's say you are dealing with online banking. Today we are in a digital world. We do a lot of online banking. Now, let's say, for example, an automated or an AI-driven phishing kit replicates the site or the website of the bank that you are dealing with. Okay, and they create a kind of a login page. Now, they would send, what the threat actors would do is they would send this particular link to this particular website through emails to thousands of the bank customers. Okay, from which could be having a kind of a prompt to verify their account details, which prompts the user to log into that particular page. Now, if you are not able to determine whether this is actually your bank's real website, or is it a fake one, you would end up logging into that particular site and your credentials could be stolen. AI is also being used by cyber criminals to evade kind of fraud detection systems. Now, most banks and online platforms, payment platforms like your UPI payment platform, the payment platforms which are offered by a bank, they often use fraud detection technologies to detect any kind of fraudulent transactions. Now, cyber criminals or threat actors, I use cyber criminal and threat actors alternatively, but they are the same. Okay, at the end of the day, they are using AI to evade these kind of fraud detections mechanisms. Okay, uh, they use machine learning and AI to study what a normal transaction behavior is, and then they mimic those normal transactional behaviors, which reduces the likelihood of these fraud detection mechanisms to detect those kind of a scenario. Okay. So, like just to give you an example, how a cyber criminal could use this technology. So they could use this technology to automate, like, carry out small fraudulent transactions, which mimic the legitimate spending patterns of a legitimate user. So those kind of transactions, which would avoid the fraud detection mechanisms to trigger any kind of alerts, right? We've also discussed about deepfakes in detail, so they can generate realistic audio So you have AI powered tools that can clone a person's voice by analyzing their voice samples. They can be used to create fraudulent phone calls or voicemail messages. Uh, Typically, even today, these kind of deepfake technologies where they're using voice impersonation is often used against targeting individuals. Where you may get a voice call from a call which resembles either your relative's phone or something like that, where they say that, so and so person is in so much danger, kindly help, kind of a scenarios. These kind of voice messages are actually targeting individuals. These kind of voice impersonation is also used by threat actors to impersonate uh, uh, your high-ranking or high-value executives within an organization or trusted figures to create some kind of a persona, and then they go about doing these kind of fraudulent activities. Uh, AI-driven tools are also used for credential harvesting, which we just discussed about right now, where you may have a kind of a phishing campaign or a kind of a website which mimics. You have AI-powered bots that can automatically fill out your login forms with stolen credentials. You know, they also kind of simulate your human interactions on websites. So these are kind of uh, threats where AI comes and plays a very crucial role. Now, when we talk about ransomware attacks, uh, they are a threat which is quite significant, not just to organizations, but we as individuals also. Because even we could end up having a ransomware infecting our own systems. And AI also plays a very crucial role in these kind of attack scenarios. Now you have your, just to give you an example, we had similar to WannaCry. Now WannaCry as a ransomware is one major threat which is posed by organizations. You also have Kaseya. Now Kaseya was a kind of a novel ransomware attack where the threat actors used AI to create a kind of a sophisticated supply chain approach, where Kaseya is basically a kind of a monitoring tool or a network management tool, which are used by service providers. So what the threat actor did was they injected the ransomware in the Kaseya server, and then they used that server to propagate the malware to all the agents that they were communicating with. Okay, so what Kaseya ransomware is also called a kind of a novel attack because the threat actors used a combination of the supply chain approach, the exploitation of a zero-day vulnerability. They also used automation for deployment of the ransomware, and the widespread and the impact was it had a kind of a global impact because all the organizations who were vendors of their MSPs or their service providers, they got impacted because of this particular threat of this threat. Okay, so Kaseya ransomware, this is how threat actors they are using a combination of AI technologies. Now, zero-day vulnerabilities are those kind of vulnerabilities which are known to the threat actor, but they are not known to the manufacturer or the vendor of the system or the application. So it is still something which is not known to the vendor and the manufacturer, so they haven't released any kind of a security patch for this, right? So the threat actors use AI, they use a supply chain approach, they use zero-day vulnerabilities, they automated the deployment of the ransomware to quickly spread across something around 15,000 organizations were impacted because of this particular ransomware. And this particular ransomware was also a double extortion ransomware, where prior to the infection or prior to the encryption of the data was stolen, and then the ransomware operator actually demanded a kind of a ransom to all the organizations with the threat of disclosing that particular stolen data. They demanded something around $70 million in terms of ransom. Right? And that is where the ransomware as a service of, you know, again evolved, because this particular threat ransomware operator was Rebel, which is now as a ransomware service provider. So the key takeaways from this particular attack was that this ransomware attack actually illustrated the growing threat of ransomware as a service platforms, where cyber criminals without any kind of technical expertise could go about launching this attack. The attack also highlighted the risks which were associated with third-party software providers, because many of the organizations that were impacted were, uh, who were relying on these MSPs. They used the Kaseya servers, so they got impacted. Uh, the exploitation of zero-day vulnerability, actually illustrated the importance to organizations to proactively assess their systems for vulnerability management and also for patching of all critical software systems. This attack also signified the importance for organizations to have an incident response plan, a robust incident response plan in place as to how they would respond to these kind of attacks for that matter. Now, as I said, AI has a role in offensive note, it's defensive measures. So organizations and security teams, security providers also use AI. So you have user behavior analysis tools, which are technology which actually leverage the AI's, the advanced analytics which are provided by artificial intelligence, machine learning, to observe the behavior of a normal user. And then if there is any kind of abnormal behavior for a user, so these kind of tools actually help you detect any kind of abnormal behavior. You have DLP solutions or data leakage data leakage prevention solutions, which are also driven by these technologies to monitor. So when you talk about data leakage, we're talking about protecting your data. So these solutions actually monitor, detect, and block the any kind of unauthorized access or transmission of sensitive data. AI also helps in real-time monitoring. They also provide in content filtering. Now, when you talk about real-time monitoring, it is basically where you monitor all the events that are happening in your environment in real time. You have your identity now with your cloud environments, organizations using cloud environments, uh, and also using a multi-cloud kind of a strategy for building in redundancies and performance, and to also address any kind of performance issues. Organizations have a multi-cloud strategy where they have their workloads hosted in multiple cloud service providers like AWS or Google Cloud Platform or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So identity and access management becomes very crucial because your users need to access all these resources and all the workloads which are hosted in these. So they need to have a common kind of an identity management solution. These solutions to enforce the kind of a principle of least privilege. That means assigning only those privileges which is useful for a particular individual to perform his tasks. They have privileged access management solutions. Now, in any organization, you have your privileged users who are administrating your systems, your databases, your applications. So these are your privileged users because they are provisioning resources, they're provisioning users, they are deprovisioning services, deprovisioning users. So these are all, and they constantly make changes to the system configurations. So these are all privileged actions. So you have privileged actions management solutions, which are driven by AI to monitor these kind of privileged solutions. You have endpoint detection mechanisms. Basically, we are all using our systems, right? So endpoint detection mechanisms are basically those systems which monitor the endpoints or the systems which the user is using, especially in a remote kind of a working environment where people are accessing your corporate resources from the endpoint. They have these solutions in place to detect any kind of malicious or abnormal behavior. You have security information and event management solutions, which basically do assist in your real-time monitoring activities, because all the data from all the logs which are coming in from the data from the different sources, they are aggregated and then they are analyzed to generate any kind of real-time alerts. So when we talk about AI, you have your AI, which actually helps in real-time threat detection. We just discussed about right now, from monitoring all the events which are happening in real time. AI also helps in real-time threat detection. Like for example, an AI system can detect any kind of unusual pattern of logins which are being performed by users, which could be based on different geographical locations or within a short period of time. They are also used for predictive threat intelligence. When we talk about proactiveness to understand what are the evolving threats, they are also used in those kind of scenarios where your AI tools actually take a lot of information from different sources, from your internal networks, as well as organizations which share threat intelligence. They use all that data to kind of predict what could be a kind of a threat scenario for an organization, and then the organization can build in its detection for preventive measures to any kind of emerging threats for that. Now, in all these kind of scenarios, AI plays a very crucial role where you have your zero trust. Now, zero trust is a kind of a security framework which is based on the simple principle that never trust any entity and always verify every entity. So typically in a zero trust architecture, uh, no user, no device, no application is trusted by default. And that is coming from all the sophisticated supply chain attacks that are coming. That is where the zero trust kind of a cyber security strategy has evolved, where organizations, they implement security solutions in such a manner that requires authentication and verification at all stages. Okay, so when you talk about authentication, you authenticate. So a user has to authenticate, a device has to authenticate, an application has to authenticate, and then based on the kind of privileges that are being assigned, where only those privileges which are assigned to those users and applications, which is required for them to do their kind of tasks, those are assigned. So micro-segmentation, these are several principles of zero trust where you have continuous authentication, least privileges. You segment your network into smaller zones so that ensuring that even if one part of the network is impacted, the infection or the incident is contained only to that segment of the network and does not spread across the entire organizations. So that's where you talk about zero trust security. Now, the crucial thing is to ensure a culture of security. So when you talk about culture of security, you need to empower your employees who are working in the organization with information about all these threats which the organization faces. So that comes about through providing ongoing trainings, security awareness programs, by inculcating a kind of a culture where you come as a security first kind of a mindset, and also to prepare and train your employees that in case if there is a cyber attack, which we refer it to as an incident, how the employees need to uh, respond when a particular incident is proclaimed. So any kind of, if you are not providing these trainings and ongoing process, then those employees may not know how to respond, which could lead to a situation that can get worse for an organization. Okay. So these are some of the kind of security measures that you would want to adopt in becoming a cybersecurity aware organizations. And that also brings me to the end of our webinar today. To take any questions if you may have. We will leave the floor open for you to have any questions. Let's see if there are any question in the question and answer box. So there is a question in the Q&A box. How do you see the future of cybersecurity regulations evolving, and what should organizations do to stay compliant? So it's a very valid question because today, the kind of environment that we live in, and I've just mentioned you have artificial intelligence, which plays a very crucial role today in organizations who are building in these technologies to increase their operational efficiency. At the same time, these same technologies are being used by cyber criminals to sophisticate their attacks. So the ethical, so when we are using these technologies, we need to pay a very close attention to the ethical use of this particular technologies. The also ensure that the data privacy, the data is protected, because oftentimes these technologies that we talk about, they are consuming a lot of data, large amount of data sets, which could include sensitive data. They could also include PII data, uh, and that could be misused or stolen. So yeah, there are regulations which are keep coming in. You have different countries, like for example, EU has established the EU AI Act. You have America, USA, China, even India. They have taken some small steps towards AI. These regulations will keep on modulating and keep on changing. So as an organization, you need to keep abreast about the regulations which are being stated. So typically, when we look at as an, for organizations which are based in India, you have your CERT authority, okay, your computer emergency response team. Now, most countries have their CERT bodies, and these CERT bodies collaborate with each other. So you can look at that, and you can also look at your industry-specific regulations and keep abreast with that knowledge. I hope I have answered your question. Yeah, I'll leave if there are any further questions, please do let me know.
Thanks, Mufaddal. There are no more questions, so we can proceed to winding up the session.
Okay, in that case, I would want to thank you all for taking part in this webinar. Okay, I hope this webinar was informative, and there was some kind of awareness which was created for all the emerging threats and how artificial intelligence plays a crucial role in today's environment. Thank you for your participation. I wish you all a very good day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Mufaddal. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Bye bye.